Ethan Miller died on a frigid winter day, the same day he discovered his life was a script and he was cast as the villain. Before the end, his 26 years played out before him, a flickering highlight reel of a life already written. Age 7. The first time he saw Sophia Hayes, his childhood sweetheart, utterly captivating, with a cool, distant elegance. He was instantly smitten. Age 15. He trailed after Sophia like a shadow, but her indifference was a constant, chilling wall. Age 18. The Hayes family empire crumbled. Her parents, facing ruin, jumped from their penthouse. Sophia, once the golden girl, was suddenly buried under a mountain of debt, her world shattered. Ethan found Sophia working a dive bar, trying to chip away at the debt. He paid off everything. In return, they signed an agreement, a sponsorship, a gilded cage he'd built for her. Age 22. Sophia staged a phenomenal comeback. She clawed her way to the top of the Forbes list. And then, out of nowhere, she fell for Liam Johnson, a broke but resilient intern from the wrong side of the tracks. Sophia offered Ethan 10 times the original debt he'd covered, desperate to end their unconventional arrangement and be with Liam. She kept upping the offer, but Ethan adamantly refused. His answer was always the same. We said a lifetime, Sophia, not a second less. Age 25. Liam, heartbroken and pressured, fled the country. His plane went down over the ocean. No survivors, no remains were ever found. Sophia, believing she'd lost her true love forever, unleashed her fury. To avenge Liam, she systematically dismantled Ethan's family's entire corporate empire. The Millers, Ethan's parents, couldn't bear the ruin. They took their own lives. Age 26. After a year of Sophia's relentless, consuming torment, Ethan's life reached its own bleak end. Snow was burying him. As consciousness faded, a final, cruel vision. Liam Johnson, alive, rushing into Sophia's arms, tears streaming down his face. Sophia, I'm not dead. That crash. Someone pulled me from the water. I finally found you. And as Liam spoke, a cold, mechanical voice echoed in Ethan's mind. Ethan Miller, Sophia Hayes, and Liam Johnson are the destined leads of this world. You are merely the villain, a plot device. You cannot, and do not deserve to, covet what isn't yours. Your role is now concluding. Countdown, 10. It felt like 10 seconds and an eternity. When Ethan opened his eyes again, he wasn't dead in the story. He was reborn. Sophia's executive assistant stood before him, expressionless, sliding a debit card across the table. Mr. Miller, the assistant said, this is my third time here on Ms. Hayes' behalf to discuss terminating your arrangement. The current offer is exceptionally generous. $500 million, if you agree to release her. The memory of that mechanical voice from before his death sent a shiver down Ethan's spine. He was back. 3 years in the past. After delivering the rehearsed lines, the assistant, seeing Ethan's frozen stare, braced for the usual rejection. The assistant leaned forward to retrieve the card and documents, ready to leave, but Ethan's hand shot out, stopping him. I accept. The assistant's eyes widened, his voice laced with shock. You've actually agreed? To end the agreement? To give Ms. Hayes her freedom? Ethan decisively signed his name on the termination papers. Then, he picked up the bank card and slipped it into his pocket. Once the assistant was gone, Ethan's hands trembled, his eyes red-rimmed. He immediately called his parents. Dad, Mom, he urged, I need you to start the paperwork for permanent residency abroad. Liquidate everything, move all our assets out of the country. I want us to leave and never come back. What is it, Ethan? What's happened? Ethan didn't know how to explain being reborn, the urgency clawing at him. He scrambled for an excuse. I had a nightmare last night. A terrible one. If we stay here, our family will be destroyed. We'll lose everything, end up ruined and forgotten. His parents were baffled, tried to reason with him, but Ethan insisted, his voice cracking with unshed tears until he finally broke down. They'd always indulged him. Eventually, they agreed. After hanging up, Ethan wiped his eyes. A heavy weight had finally lifted from his chest. But in the next second, the door opened, and Sophia Hayes, whom he hadn't seen in ages, walked in. Seeing Ethan's tear-streaked face, her own expression hardened. You still haven't signed? She demanded. Look, I know breaking the contract is on me, but $500 million should be more than enough compensation. What more could you possibly want? Ethan was momentarily stunned by her confident assertion. He realized then, the assistant hadn't told Sophia he'd already agreed. She just assumed he hadn't signed. He tried to explain, but Sophia cut him off. She frowned, grabbing his arm and pulling him out the door. You're coming with me. Now. A fast drive later, They screeched to a halt outside a hospital. Sophia dragged him to the ER, where they could hear a doctor's serious tone. Ms. Hayes, Mr. Johnson's kidney transplant can begin shortly. It hit Ethan then. In his previous life, he had been in a car accident, had surgery for a ruptured kidney. Sophia hadn't visited him once during that time. The memory was painfully fresh, but this had nothing to do with him now. Why had Sophia dragged him here? A sudden, chilling thought struck Ethan. You brought me here. You want me to donate a kidney to Liam? Sophia shot him a cold glance. Not you. Me. You. Ethan was even more stunned. Sophia looked towards the operating room, at the frail figure visible through a window. Liam's kidney was damaged in an accident. I'm a match. Even though he'd resolved to leave her, to walk away from it all, hearing how far Sophia would go for Liam still sent a pang of pain through Ethan's heart. You love him that much? Yes, she said, which is why I brought you here. You'll stay where I can see you. I won't let you do anything to hurt Liam at a time like this. With that, Sophia had her security detail restrain Ethan, changed into scrubs, and disappeared into the ER alone. The red light above the door illuminated. The surgery had begun. Ethan sat numbly in a waiting room chair, his heart aching with a dull, persistent throb. A couple of nurses walked by, arm in arm, chatting about some popular TV show. That other guy in the show is such a jerk, right? He totally deserved to lose everything and go crazy. Doesn't he know the main couple is meant to be? Ethan listened silently. A faint, bitter smile touched his lips, an expression of pure, lonely resignation. Yeah, he thought. The main couple, destined to be together. So, in this second chance at life, he, the villain, was going to live his own life. He was done playing the bad guy. He was opting out of their drama. The surgery was a success. When the light above the door switched off, Ethan stood up to leave, but the bodyguards immediately blocked his path. Ms. Hayes' orders. You don't go anywhere until she's awake. Ethan had no choice but to sit back down and wait. Minutes ticked by. A sharp, twisting pain began to clench his stomach. Ethan's face contorted, beads of sweat rolling down his forehead. He knew this feeling, his chronic gastritis flaring up. His lips were dry and pale as he spoke, his voice weak. I'm not feeling well. Could you give me some antacids? Or just a glass of hot water? The bodyguards watched his suffering, their faces impassive, their stance firm. No, Mr. Miller. Whatever the problem, we can't leave our post. Ms. Hayes' orders. All for Liam. She just let him suffer. Each word was a weight on Ethan's chest, making it hard to breathe. The pain became unbearable. He couldn't even sit upright and slumped to the floor, biting his lip to stifle a groan as his vision blurred. When he opened his eyes again, the cold tile of the floor was against his cheek. Seeing him stir, one of the bodyguards informed him, all business. Ms. Hayes is awake, Mr. Miller. You can request her permission to leave now. A bone-deep weariness permeated Ethan. His sweat-soaked clothes clung to him, a clammy chill spreading through his body. He forced himself to his feet, dragging his exhausted body to Sophia's hospital room. Just outside the door, he heard Liam's soft, almost pleading voice. Sophia, you look so pale, so weak. Are you okay? By the way, did you find out who the kind person was who donated their kidney? I really want to thank them. I might not have made it otherwise. Sophia's hand, holding a spoon, paused midair before she quickly composed herself. She blew on the spoonful of soup, then gently fed it to Liam, her voice incredibly tender. I'm fine. Just worried sick while you were in surgery, not knowing. That's why I look rough. The donor, they passed away. I'll convey your gratitude to their family. Don't worry, I've taken care of everything. Liam, deeply moved, threw his arms around Sophia. He must have pressed against her incision. Sophia's face went several shades whiter with pain, but she masked it, calmly continuing to feed him. Liam, oblivious, nestled closer, his eyes misty. All right, didn't the guard say Ethan was having a really bad stomach flare-up? That he even passed out from the pain? Aren't you going to check on him? The moment she heard Ethan's name, Sophia's expression darkened. He's probably faking it for attention. Ignore him. Through the small window in the door, Ethan listened, a dull, sour ache spreading through his chest. Between him and Sophia, he'd taken 100 steps towards her. She'd sooner take 100 steps back than meet him halfway. But with Liam, he didn't have to take a single step. Sophia would cross any distance to be by his side, to give him everything. Sophia loved Liam enough to give him a kidney, yet she wouldn't let him know, afraid he'd feel guilty or indebted. Ethan finally, truly understood the vast, unbridgeable chasm between being loved and not being loved. But he didn't know he was there. Liam took a few sips of the soup and then pushed it away. This doesn't taste good. It's too bland. Remember that little diner near campus? The one with the amazing tomato soup? I used to get it every morning. Haven't had it in ages. I kind of miss it. Seeing the wistful look on Liam's face, Sophia immediately put down the bowl, stood up, and grabbed her car keys. I'll go get it for you. No, it's fine. It's such a small thing. Just send someone. Sophia shook her head, gently helping Liam lie back down and tucking the blanket around him. Anything to do with you. The places you've been, the food you've eaten, the sights you've seen. I want to experience them myself. Wait for me. I'll be right back. As she spoke, Sophia opened the door and came face to face with Ethan. The smile on her face froze instantly, replaced by that familiar, icy indifference she reserved for him. What are you doing here? Are you trying to cause trouble for Liam again? Watching the rapid shift in her expression, Ethan's fingertips trembled. He took a shallow breath and explained softly. I came to tell you. I won't bother Liam anymore. You don't have to worry. Sophia always doubted anything Ethan said. This time was no different. You want me to stop worrying? Then end our agreement for good. Set me free. With that, Sophia turned and walked away, not hearing Ethan's murmured words. Sophia, I already have. You're completely free. Back at the mansion, Ethan grabbed a quick bite and then started packing. Most of the things in the mansion were his. Sophia owned very little there, and even some of that he'd bought for her. Trench coats, perfumes, makeup, her toothbrush, her favorite mug. He didn't leave a single thing. Candid photos of them he'd secretly treasured, love letters he'd penned as a lovesick teenager, all of it trashed, along with any other miscellaneous junk. The day he finally finished purging the mansion, this place he'd once pathetically tried to call home, Sophia returned. She noticed something was off the moment she walked in, her eyes scanning the rooms. Where's my stuff? Threw it out, Ethan told her matter-of-factly. Sophia gave him a cool, appraising look, her eyes narrowing slightly. I'm gone for a few days, and you throw a tantrum like this? I only threw out things I bought. Anything that was actually yours, I didn't touch. Besides, you barely used any of it anyway. Sophia heard this and assumed he was complaining about her absence, about her violating their agreement. She frowned, a chill in her voice. I've told you before, I don't want to honor that contract anymore. I don't want to be tied to you for life. Think it over. Sign the papers. Hasn't your assistant told you? Last time, I already. Ethan was cut off mid-sentence as Liam Johnson hurried in lightly, his voice soft. Mr. Miller, Sophie has been at the hospital taking care of me. That's why she couldn't come back. If you're angry, please blame me. Seeing Liam bowing apologetically, Sophia quickly frowned and helped him straighten up. Liam, what he and I have is purely transactional. There are no real feelings involved. You don't need to apologize. Hearing that, Ethan's breath hitched. A tremor ran through him. Indeed, to Sophia, their relationship had never been more than a cold business transaction, each price increase a desperate bid for freedom. While he had poured his heart and soul into every moment, investing years of genuine feelings, she had been merely counting down the days until she could buy her way out. He watched the tender, loving way Sophia looked at Liam, then silently turned and went back to his room. A few moments later, there was a knock. Liam entered, holding a cup of coffee, looking at Ethan timidly. Mr. Miller, Sophia's on a call. I made some coffee and brought you a cup. I was also hoping we could talk. In his previous life, Ethan had rejected him outright, thrown him out. But now, having decided to leave, his animosity towards Liam had faded. His demeanor was calm. What do you want to talk about? Liam nervously clenched his hands, his eyes clouded with worry. I know you and Sophia go way back, that you were childhood sweethearts. But you can't force feelings. Tying her to you with a contract. She's miserable every second, and you're not getting the love you want either. It's just going to end with both of you hurt. Is that really what you want? With every word, Ethan's expression grew more complex. He stared at Liam, a silent, humorless smile playing on his lips. And what position are you in to tell me all this? I just love Sophia just like you do. I don't want to see her suffer like this. She doesn't love you. Your presence. It constantly reminds her of the lowest, most painful time in her life. She's not just trying to escape the cage you built for her, supposedly out of love. She's trying to escape that dark past. She's such a proud person, she'd never show her wounds to anyone. But she can't escape those shadows, and that's why she's so withdrawn and unhappy around you. Ethan was stunned. For the first time, he began to understand why Sophia was so desperate to get away from him. Yes, he had walked beside her through those 4 years of darkness, a silent guardian witnessing her most vulnerable moments. He had foolishly believed that their shared pain, their history written in tears and trials, would naturally bloom into love. How naive he had been. But for Sophia, desperate for a fresh start, it was all just a lingering nightmare. And the fact that Sophia showed her softest, most unspoken vulnerabilities to Liam. Didn't that just prove Ethan had never truly been allowed in her world? A wave of overwhelming bitterness washed over him. The lingering embers of obsession he'd clung to in his heart finally turned to cold, dead ash. He didn't want to show weakness in front of Liam, but he couldn't control the wave of grief. He pushed himself up, needing to get away. Liam, thinking Ethan was refusing to talk, didn't want to lose this chance. He hurried after him, reaching out. "Mr. Miller, I just wanted to tell you." Before he could finish, Liam, in his haste, bumped into a shelf near the wall. Several vases tumbled off, crashing down onto Ethan. Ethan grunted, falling to the floor, shards cutting him, blood welling from multiple wounds. The color drained from his face as waves of excruciating pain coursed through his body, leaving him gasping for air, each breath a desperate struggle. Liam was terrified. Before he could react, Ethan's golden retriever suddenly rushed out, barking protectively, and Liam, startled, went pale. Liam had been bitten by a dog as a child. The sight of the large golden retriever sent him into a panic, and he instinctively turned to flee. The dog gave chase. In his frantic escape, Liam twisted his ankle and tumbled headlong down the stairs. A man's scream echoed through the mansion. Sophia, hearing the scream, rushed out to see Liam at the bottom of the stairs. Her eyes widened in horror. She flew down the steps, cradling Liam protectively. Seeing the ugly, bleeding gash on his forehead, her heart twisted with pain. Her tear-filled eyes blazed with an inferno of rage as she glared at the dog on the landing, her chest heaving with barely contained fury, each breath carrying the weight of her wrath. Ethan had also heard the cry. Gritting his teeth against the throbbing pain from the fallen vases, he managed to pull himself up to see what was happening. But as he emerged, he was met with Sophia's out-of-control accusation. "Liam just had surgery. He's weak, and he's terrified of dogs. Why would you let your dog out to attack him?" Ethan hadn't anticipated this disastrous turn of events. He could barely breathe through the pain, managing only a weak, raspy attempt to explain. He knocked over the vases first. Buddy only went after him because he saw me get hurt. You know, Buddy, he's usually so gentle. He's scared of strangers. He was just worried about me." "Enough. I don't want to hear your pathetic excuses. Since you can't control your dog, and it's caused Liam such serious injury, then have it put down, before it causes any more trouble." Sophia wouldn't listen to a word. She immediately called for her bodyguards, ordering them to seize the dog. Seeing the burly men advance, Buddy tensed, instantly on guard. Hearing Sophia's decree, a chill coursed through Ethan. He instinctively tried to shield Buddy, to beg them to spare him. But the bodyguards were merciless. They slammed Ethan against the wall and went for the dog. Seeing this, Buddy lunged forward, barking furiously. A bodyguard raised a heavy baton and brought it down hard on the dog. Buddy, yelping, blood blooming on his golden fur, still tried to bark and reach Ethan, but a guard grabbed him by the leg and lifted him. Buddy thrashed with all his might, tried to break free. The guard couldn't hold on. His grip suddenly loosened. The next second, Buddy fell from the second-floor landing to the marble floor below. "Buddy!" Ethan's world shattered. He stumbled down the stairs, scooping Buddy into his arms, only to see the light in his beloved dog's eyes slowly dimming. Buddy nudged his hand one last time, then closed his eyes. In that moment, Ethan felt his heart break, an agony beyond words. He cradled Buddy's cooling body, tears streaming down his face as he looked up at Sophia, his voice raw with despair. "If you must hate someone, hate me." His voice cracked with raw anguish. "But why? Why did you have to be so cruel? Why did an innocent soul have to pay the price? He was just being loyal. He didn't deserve this." But Sophia's entire focus was on the unconscious Liam. She shot Ethan a frigid look. "He did nothing wrong? No, this is all your fault. Did you think letting him die for you would get you off the hook? Let me tell you, I will not let Liam suffer for nothing." With that, Sophia barked a few orders to her bodyguards. The wail of an ambulance siren grew closer. She spared no further glance for Ethan or Buddy, sweeping out with Liam. Buddy's broken leg dangled limply in Ethan's arms. Watching Sophia's retreating back, he could no longer hold back his grief, sobbing until his voice was gone. "Sophia, years ago, when those loan sharks cornered you in that alley, Buddy tried to save you. They beat him, abused him, broke his leg. That's why he became so terrified of strangers. He loved you so much. He stayed by your side when you were at your lowest, got you through so many long nights, waited for you to come home every single day. Why? Why could you be so heartless? His words were a torrent of anguish. But Sophia didn't pause for a second. The only response he got was the bodyguard's cold, hard voice. Mr. Miller, Ms. Hayes said that since you let your dog attack someone, you're to be taken to the cold storage unit to reflect on your actions. And with that, 3 men dragged him away and threw him into the walk-in freezer. Ethan clutched Buddy's lifeless body, his bloodshot eyes vacant and numb. A biting chill enveloped him, seeping into his bones, damp and frigid. He shivered uncontrollably, frost forming on his clothes, his skin turning an unnatural white. Time crawled by. His heartbeat grew slower, fainter, until he finally lost consciousness. He didn't know how much time had passed when he woke up in a hospital. A doctor was adjusting his foredrip, his tone grave. How in the world did you get locked in a freezer? If you'd been found 2 minutes later, you would have frozen to death. Frozen to death. The words sent that bone-deep chill coursing through Ethan again, as if it had never left. He remembered his past life. After Sophia had run him down with her car, his internal organs ruptured, how he'd been left to die, buried in the snow, freezing to death. Now, in this new life, he'd almost died the same way again. So was this his fate? To love Sophia Hayes, or even just be near her, meant an inevitable slide towards death, dragging everything he cared about down with him. He thought of his parents, forced to jump from their penthouse in his previous life to save him. He thought of Buddy, his lifeless body heavy in his arms. His heart seized with an unbearable pain. His fingers dug into his palms, drawing blood. In his anguish, his phone rang. It was his parents. Ethan, your father and I have transferred all the assets out of the country. The immigration papers have been submitted. They should be approved next week. Are you absolutely sure about this? About leaving the country? What about Sophia? Don't you love her very much? Ethan stared blankly at the white ceiling tiles, his voice flat, devoid of any ripple of emotion. In this lifetime, I will never, ever love Sophia Hayes again. The words had barely left his lips when the door creaked open. Sophia stood there, her expression unreadable, looking straight at him. The instant their eyes met, Ethan flinched away as if he'd received an electric shock. In all the years she'd known him, Sophia's impression was of a tireless moth, constantly drawn to her flame, orbiting her 24/7. He'd shamelessly declared his love for her countless times, his gaze always ardent, full of an adoration she found suffocating. She'd been annoyed beyond measure, desperately trying to push him away, even hoping his obsessive affection might, by some miracle, transfer to someone else. But now, hearing him actually say he didn't love her, seeing him genuinely recoil from her, she didn't feel the relief she'd imagined. Instead, a strange disquiet settled in. She didn't understand the source of this feeling, nor did she want to reveal it to Ethan. So, she maintained her usual cool, unapproachable facade. Don't love me anymore? Then why did you hurt Liam? Why do you keep feigning illness to get my attention? Why won't you sign the agreement? The doctor said your injuries were serious, but you look perfectly fine to me. Still have the energy to put on this act. Faced with Sophia's sarcastic questioning, Ethan lowered his eyes, his voice hoarse with an exhaustion that went bone deep. Every word I've said is the truth. It's true I don't love you anymore. It's true I was sick. And as for that agreement you're so desperate for, I've already signed it. Just as he finished speaking, the Miller family's housekeeper walked in. Young Master Ethan, the designer, finished the sketches for those wedding dresses you commissioned for Ms. Hayes last month. Would you like to review them for any changes? Sophia let out a humorless laugh. She snatched the thick stack of design sketches and, right in front of Ethan, tore them to shreds. Then, under the housekeeper's stunned gaze, she turned to leave, tossing one final remark over her shoulder. Since you clearly don't understand the meaning of truth, let me teach you. These wedding dresses? I don't like a single one of them. The door slammed shut with a resounding bang. The housekeeper looked at Ethan helplessly. Young master, I'll have a designer send over a new set of drawings immediately. Ethan shook his head gently, stopping her. Don't bother. Destroy all the surprises and gifts I had prepared for Sophia. They're not needed anymore. Besides, he was about to disappear from Sophia Hayes' world for good. He just had to endure one more week. That afternoon, Ethan checked out of the hospital. He took Buddy to the crematorium. The big, goofy dog who had always stuck to his side, who had always listened to him, was now just a box of ashes. He carried the small urn home. Seeing Buddy's favorite chew toy lying on the sofa, he froze, a flood of memories overwhelming him. One moment, Buddy was bouncing excitedly, retrieving a gift Sophia had callously thrown away. The next, Buddy was a steadfast guardian, staying by his side all night when he'd been despondent over Liam. And then, a flash from his past life. Buddy, old and gray at 15, his gaze peaceful as he passed from old age. Ethan closed his eyes, but tears breached his defenses, silently tracing paths down his cheeks, pattering onto the floor. This time, Buddy wouldn't be there to nuzzle into his lap, to offer his silent, comforting presence. A few days later, Ethan attended the wedding of two close friends from his social circle. He'd received the invitation and, forcing himself to rally, got dressed and went to the reception. His friends, noticing his wan complexion, quickly gathered around him, offering words of comfort. Ethan, Sophia's been off with Liam Johnson, taking him to visit his parents' graves, even went back to his hick hometown to meet his broke-ass folks. But she's definitely just been charmed by that pretty boy. Don't worry, don't be sad. You got that contract, remember? She'd never marry him. Exactly. Some uncultured, dirt-poor social climber. Thinking he can marry into the big leagues? What's he got that you don't? Sophia's just having a fling. Once she's bored of him, she'll come back to you. After all, you're the reason she was able to make her comeback. Ethan knew they were trying to stand up for him. But the Ethan of this life understood. Sophia's love for Liam was an impenetrable fortress. He had no intention of banging his head against that wall again, nor did he want his friends to suffer on his account. He told them, quite seriously, what he now believed. My agreement with Sophia has been terminated. Who she loves, who she marries from now on, has nothing to do with me. And please, stop talking about Liam. He's Sophia's destined leading man. No one can change that. His friends stared at him, their eyes wide with disbelief. You've been crazy about her for almost 20 years. You're really just giving up? Losing to a guy like Liam Johnson? Can you honestly live with that? Liam is wonderful. He's 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times better than any of you. He's sincere, kind, optimistic, brave, and resilient. He's the only man I have ever loved, and the only one I will ever love. As for you, gossiping about him behind his back, you're like rats scurrying in the gutter. Disgusting. Sophia's icy voice came from behind them. Ethan turned to see her gently pulling a red-eyed Liam into her embrace. Then she made a call. Notify the project department immediately. Terminate all collaborations with the Cole, Sherman, Ford, and Sterling families. The color drained from the faces of everyone present. They stared at her in shock. We barely said anything. You're going to torpedo all these business deals just for Liam Johnson? Is he really worth all this drama? Sophia lifted her eyes, filled with utter disdain, her tone frigid. He is. Liam is my bottom line. Anyone who touches him will pay the price. Her gaze swept across the group, finally landing on Ethan, heavy with threat. Ethan knew she was just making an example of them to warn him. He clenched his jaw, wanting to defend his friends. Do you really have to do this? Sophia's voice was chillingly cold. Yes. Anyone who slanders Liam will face the consequences. Having lived through it once before, he knew Sophia meant every word. He couldn't fight her head on again. He led his friends away. Soon, the wedding ceremony began. Though they were seated at a different table, whenever Ethan glanced over, he could see Sophia and Liam's every interaction. She would carefully rinse the teacups before placing them in front of Liam, serve him food, peel shrimp for him, and intercept any toasts or drinks offered to him. Only with Liam did Sophia shed her icy exterior, becoming so gentle, meticulous, patient, and attentive. The heart Ethan had tried to warm for over a decade, in Liam's presence, melted into tender devotion. Lost in thought, he realized the wedding had reached the bouquet toss. Liam merely glanced wistfully at the bride's bouquet, and Sophia took his hand, leading him into the crowd. Ethan sat silently, watching as Sophia, with surprising agility, snatched the bouquet from dozens of outstretched hands. After catching it, she straightened her dress, then dropped to one knee, solemnly presenting the flowers to Liam. There was no ring. It wasn't a proposal. But Ethan understood. Sophia was using this gesture to make a silent declaration to Liam and to every guest present. She, Sophia Hayes, had chosen Liam Johnson. She would marry no one else. Instantly, all eyes in the room swiveled to Ethan. Facing those looks of pity, sympathy, and ridicule, Ethan raised his hand and began to clap, leading the applause. He sincerely hoped Sophia would get her heart's desire. That way, he could finally fly far away and live his own life peacefully. After the wedding, Ethan was heading home when he ran into Sophia downstairs. The moment their eyes met, he tried to look away and walk around her, but she called out to him about ending the sponsorship agreement. Are you still thinking it over? Or are you not satisfied with the amount? How much do you want? You can just name your price. Again and again, Ethan had lost all desire to explain things to her. He kept his head down, his voice flat, betraying no emotion. Let me ask you something. In your eyes, am I, and these Fernanda Chingfen, dozen or so years of connection/affection, need a good phrase, something that could be completely dismissed with this money? If I take your money, we draw a line, never have to see each other again for the rest of our lives. Is that it? His questions silenced Sophia. She stared at him, a complex, unreadable emotion slowly surfacing in her eyes. She wanted to tell Ethan that she only wanted to end their abnormal relationship, not to sever all ties with him. But then she saw Liam emerging from the restroom, and the words died on her lips. She said only one word, but the meaning it conveyed was entirely different. Yes. Hearing her admit it, Ethan's already numb heart still felt a dull, oppressive weight. But he quickly regained his composure. Watching Sophia take Liam's hand, their fingers interlacing tightly, he gave a slight nod. Understand. Don't worry, you'll get what you want. In 5 days, everything you desire will be yours. 5 days? What 5 days? Sophia frowned, about to ask, but Ethan had already turned and left. When Liam mentioned he was hungry, she quickly forgot Ethan's words. Back home, Ethan cleared out the last of his assets. Gaming collectibles, the mansion, sports cars, he sold everything, converting it all to cash. A torrential rain began to fall that night. Ethan was packing his suitcases when he heard a frantic knocking at the door. He opened it to find Liam Johnson, drenched to the bone, crying as he knelt before him. Mr. Miller, Sophia collapsed today and was rushed to the ER. But because I'm not family, I couldn't sign the consent forms for her emergency treatment. I had to try and contact her aunt overseas. I almost made her miss the critical window for help. She's still in the ICU. You know her parents are gone. She has no close relatives here. I'm begging you, please, in the contract, set her free, okay? I want to be her husband. I don't want to be helpless in a crisis like this, just watching her wait to die. Faced with Liam's desperate plea, Ethan remembered that around this time in his previous life, Sophia had also fallen gravely ill. The moment he'd found out, he had immediately transferred her to the best private hospital, brought in all the top medical experts in the city. That's why she had pulled through without major complications. Afterward, he had cared for her day and night, without changing clothes or resting for several days, until he was so exhausted he could barely stand. But when Sophia woke up, she had flown into a rage and thrown him out simply because, in his panic, he had yelled a few sharp words at Liam. So this time, he didn't bother. He pretended he knew nothing. And Liam, an ordinary person with no background, no connections, no influence, naturally wouldn't be able to think clearly in such a crisis, nor could he pull strings to access so many effective emergency measures. Sophia would suffer a lot. That was to be expected. But she was, after all, the heroine of this world. Her ending was surely a safe one. So Ethan wasn't worried at all. He just told Liam calmly, Mr. Johnson, do you enjoy watching romantic dramas? You know how the handsome, wealthy hero and the sweet, innocent heroine fall in love at first sight, but then they have to go through all sorts of trials before they get their happily ever after? It's the same for you and Sophia. But no matter what unexpected events you encounter, even if there are supporting characters like me trying to stir up trouble, nothing will stop you from finding your way to each other. So don't worry about Sophia's safety. You are her destined husband. You will grow old with her, a lifetime together. And I won't create any more obstacles for you. What you're asking for, I've already given to Sophia. Please go back. Liam, frantic with worry, stared blankly, not understanding a word Ethan was saying. Ethan didn't explain further. He closed the door and went upstairs to rest. The rain poured down all night. The next morning, when he came downstairs, he found Liam hadn't left. He'd been kneeling in the courtyard all night. Liam's face was ashen, his whole body listless, swaying precariously. Seeing his weakened state, Ethan was startled and moved to help him up. But just as he reached out, Sophia, who had just arrived, shoved him aside. She was still in a hospital gown, her face devoid of color, yet she forcefully embraced Liam. When her hand touched Liam's burning forehead, her gaze, when it turned to Ethan, became sharp and glacial. Ethan Miller, he has never done anything to offend you. In a storm like this, you made him kneel all night? How can your heart be so cruel? Facing Sophia's furious denunciation, Ethan's hands clenched into fists, his voice filled with a profound sense of helplessness. It has nothing to do with me. I told him to go home last night. He's the one who knelt here for hours without a word. Nothing to do with you. Liam is unconscious now. You can make up any excuse you want. He can't argue back. But you know what you did, and I know too. So don't bother with these misleading justifications. You'd better pray nothing serious happens to Liam, or I will make you pay. Sophia finished her tirade and immediately rushed Liam to the hospital. She also had her men forcibly take Ethan along in the car. Throughout the drive, Sophia stared unblinkingly at the unconscious Liam, her eyes overflowing with heartache, constantly urging the driver to go faster. The driver was sweating, his nerves stretched for Keen to the breaking point. As they rounded a corner, the driver slammed on the accelerator, failing to notice a sports car suddenly appearing from the blind spot. The next second, the two vehicles collided head-on. Ethan, in the passenger seat, took the brunt of the impact. His head slammed against the car door. He felt as if his internal organs were being rearranged, the pain excruciating. He could barely breathe, his consciousness gradually fading amidst the pain and chaos. His eyelids grew heavy, a sea of red obscuring his vision. Before he blacked out, he saw, through the shattered car window, Sophia helping a blood-soaked Liam away from the wreckage. Dimly, he heard the wail of ambulance sirens and a doctor's urgent voice. This patient has a damaged artery. He needs surgery immediately, or his life will be in danger. Ma'am, are you sure you want to prioritize the patient with the high fever? He has no life-threatening injuries. Delaying his treatment slightly won't pose any danger. Sophia's voice, muffled by a door, reached Ethan's ears, the last sound he heard before losing consciousness. I only care about Liam's safety. No matter how badly Ethan Miller is hurt, you must save Liam first. What happens to anyone else is none of my concern. Wrenching himself free from a long, terrifying nightmare, Ethan woke to see his parents, their faces streaked with tears. Ethan, the doctor said you almost didn't make it. Your father and I were so scared. We nearly had heart attacks. Thank God you're okay. The relief of surviving flooded Ethan's heart, and he too couldn't stop the tears from falling. The three of them wept together for a long time before his parents managed to compose themselves, gently wiping his tears. You've been so badly hurt this time. Should we postpone going abroad for a month, honey? Recalling everything that had happened since his rebirth, Ethan still felt a lingering fear. He shook his head firmly, his resolve unshaken. No postponement. Dad, Mom, the medical care in Europe is excellent. I can recover there. We stick to the original plan. We leave tomorrow afternoon. On his last day, Ethan asked his parents to go back to the mansion to pick up his luggage and Buddy's ashes. Two nurses came in to do their rounds, chattering about hospital gossip. Did you hear the CEO of Hayes Corporation is also in our hospital? She's booked out all the private rooms and brought in every professor-level specialist in the city, all to take care of her boyfriend who just has a bit of fever. That devoted? Sounds like something out of K-drama. Who's this guy anyway? To make someone like Sophia Hayes, who practically runs this city, so invested, do you know? The other nurse shook her head, then something seemed to click. Her eyes lit up as she looked at Ethan. You were brought in with that guy, weren't you? Do you know him? Is he from some super-rich family or something? Ethan's eyelashes fluttered. He lowered his gaze, his voice soft. I don't know him. Maybe, like you said, he's a romantic hero of some drama. How would an NPC like me know? The nurses figured as much. They removed the pillow from under his hand and left, still chatting idly. The room fell silent. Ethan picked up his phone and methodically deleted Sophia Hayes from all his contacts. After he finished, his parents called to say they were almost at the hospital. An orderly helped him into a wheelchair and pushed him out of the room. The moment the elevator doors opened, Ethan saw Sophia's executive assistant. The assistant nodded in greeting, holding up a folder, his tone distant yet polite. Mr. Miller, after you signed the papers last time, I was unexpectedly sent on a business trip for half a month. I haven't had a chance to submit this agreement yet. Rest assured, I'll hand it over to Ms. Hayes now. Just as Ethan was about to speak, he heard Sophia's voice from behind him. He turned to meet her icy gaze. How many times is this now? He still refuses to sign. The assistant looked momentarily flustered, about to speak, but Ethan cut him off. See for yourself. As he spoke, he took the folder from the assistant's hand and personally handed it to Sophia. Seeing Ethan's expressionless face and the assistant's hesitant demeanor, a flicker of suspicion crossed Sophia's eyes. She was just about to open the agreement when her phone rang. Sophia, where are you? The nurse said it's time for your checkup. Come back quickly. The half-open cover of the folder snapped shut. Sophia thrust it back into the assistant's hands. No need to look. I know he definitely didn't sign. Next time, draw up a new contract. Triple the offer? No, make it 30 times. After giving her instructions, she turned her gaze back to Ethan, her tone clipped and urgent. This is the fourth time I've increased the offer. I hope, this time, you won't disappoint me. With that, she turned sharply and headed towards the VIP wing. The assistant looked at Ethan, bewildered. Mr. Miller, this. Ethan heard Liam's voice and knew Sophia was rushing off to be with her beloved. He watched Sophia's retreating figure, a relieved smile gracing his lips. Apart from Liam Johnson, nothing else in this world matters to her. As for the fact that I've set her free, tell her next time she actually wants to hear it. Ding! The elevator doors opened. Mr. and Mrs. Miller walked over to Ethan, smiling, draped a coat over his shoulders, and pushed his wheelchair out of the hospital and towards the airport. Outside, the sun shone brightly in a clear sky. Ethan raised his hand, catching the warm sunlight. The chill that had clung to him for so long finally began to dissipate. Before boarding, he took out the 3 plane tickets, smiling at his parents. Dad, Mom, let's forget the past and start a new life. This time, I don't want to be a supporting character anymore. I'm going to be the one and only irreplaceable protagonist of my own life. Meanwhile, Sophia was gently coaxing a tearful Liam Johnson. There. Didn't the doctor say that with proper care, your test results will return in normal? Liam nodded, hugging Sophia tightly. His eyes, moist with tears, looked up at her. Sophia, I'll take good care of you. Help you recover quickly. They held each other close, as if nothing in the world could ever tear them apart. A knock on the door interrupted their sweet embrace. Ms. Hayes, this contract agreement hasn't been handed over to you yet. Sophia's gaze shifted to her executive assistant, standing at the door. She took the folder he offered and casually flipped it open. He still hasn't signed it, right? Why get it to me? Sophia turned to the last page. Seeing the familiar handwriting at the bottom, she froze. Sophia, what's wrong? Liam, beside her, leaned in and also saw Ethan's signature. Sophia stared at the date next to the signature, her knuckles white as she gripped the edge of the folder. He signed it. Sophia's hand trembled slightly. She looked at her assistant, a hint of bewilderment in her eyes. Ms. Hayes, Mr. Miller signed it a half-month ago and accepted the bank card. Hearing this, Liam was ecstatic and threw his arms around Sophia. That's great, Sophia. We can finally be together. Sophia, however, did not look as overjoyed as he expected. Sophia trembled, the folder in her hand falling to the hospital floor with a thud. You're saying he really signed it? The assistant before her looked dismayed. Yes, Ms. Hayes. Mr. Miller signed it in my presence half a month ago. Ms. Hayes. The assistant, seeing Sophia's stunned expression, added worriedly, Please rest assured, Ms. Hayes, the signature has been verified by our legal team. It is legally binding. If that's the case, then we're even. Upon hearing this, Sophia thrust the folder harshly back into the assistant's arms. For some reason, she felt a slight emptiness in her heart. Sophia. Liam's eyes welled with tears, teardrops clinging to the corners of his smiling lips. Sophia sat on his lap. Liam, we can finally be together. Their warm breaths mingled, heating their faces. The assistant, seeing this, quickly retreated, gently closing the door of the VIP private room. Sophia tilted her head up, kissing away the tears from the corners of Liam's eyes, placing a soft peck on his eyelashes. Liam leaned down, kissing Sophia's soft lips. The warm tears evaporated in their shared breaths, turning into a mist that caressed their faces. Liam's fingertips brushed against Sophia's soft waist, making her gasp lightly. Within the private room, the sounds of their passionate, ambiguous/suggestive kisses and soft, wet noises echoed. It was a long time before silence returned. Sophia led Liam back to the mansion, Liam's face etched with worry. Sophia, will Mr. Miller be angry that you brought me back here? Sophia pressed a kiss to his lips. He wouldn't dare. You're the one who will spend the rest of your life with me, my rightful husband. What does Ethan Miller count for? Not making a move out is already a gesture of consideration for our past connection. Sophia entered the security code, and the mansion door opened. She gently took Liam's hand, speaking softly to him. Liam, you can move into the master bedroom. I'll have Ethan move his things to a guest room. She squeezed Liam's hand reassuringly. Sophia pushed open the door. When she saw the state of the interior, she stopped in her tracks. Sophia, what's wrong? Liam looked at Sophia, who was clearly frozen beside him. Sophia composed herself after a moment, smiling at Liam. It's nothing, Liam. Come on in. Sophia took a few steps forward. She no longer felt the familiar furry touch against her leg. The golden retriever named Buddy would never again run towards her, tail wagging, with that unique puppy smile. Even, Sophia looked up towards the second floor. Usually, Ethan would be standing by the railing of the staircase, smiling as he watched her enter. Sophia shook her head, trying to clear these thoughts from her mind. Liam, this is your home now? Sophia led Liam to the second floor. She was about to push open the master bedroom door to tell Ethan to move to the guest room. Unexpectedly, when she opened the door, she was utterly stunned. Previously, the master bedroom had been filled with Ethan's various collectibles on the bed. Photos of Sophia he had secretly taken adorned the nightstand. On that same nightstand, he always kept a vase filled with fresh flowers. However, the bedroom before Sophia was empty. Everything Ethan had personally arranged was gone without a trace. Sophia rushed forward and pulled open the drawer of the empty desk. The drawer, once filled with love letters, was bare. She opened the closet, only to find that all of Ethan's clothes had vanished. Even the various dresses he had personally designed for her were gone without a trace, leaving only a few of Sophia's own garments. Sophia's face clouded over with displeasure. She called for the mansion's housekeeper. "Where are Mr. Miller's things?" The housekeeper looked surprised. "Ms. Hayes, Mr. Miller's parents came this morning to collect his remaining luggage. They said they were moving abroad. Weren't you aware of this?" Sophia's hands barely supported her on the desk. A strained smile touched her lips. Considerate of him to move out on his own. Liam stepped forward and hugged Sophia from behind, his voice filled with joy. "Sophia, this is wonderful. There are no more obstacles between us." Sophia, as if startled awake, turned and embraced Liam. "Liam, we've finally reached this day." Sophia buried her head in Liam's neck. "I'm truly so happy. Everything has gone so smoothly. Liam, having you by my side is all I need. I don't need anything else." Sophia spoke gently to Liam, then naturally kissed his forehead. Before Ethan Miller ascended the boarding ramp, he took one last look back at the city. It held too many of his memories, too much of everything related to Sophia Hayes. With no lingering attachment, he turned and stepped into the aircraft. Let the past remain where it was. The flight to Europe slowly climbed into the clouds, leaving only a faint white contrail that soon vanished. Ethan spent half a month recovering in a private clinic in France. His body gradually healed. He turned to look out the window at the vibrant foreign scenery, bright sunshine, lush green lawns, couples picnicking together. In the distance, the Eiffel Tower stood silently against the azure sky, capturing his attention. Once his medical test showed he was fully recovered, Ethan checked out. Bathing in the sunlight, Ethan felt a profound sense of liberation, both physically and mentally. So, he could leave everything behind, no longer heartbroken by Sophia's indifference, no longer tormented by Liam's presence. In this moment, Ethan Miller was a new person, the master of his own life. Returning to the Miller family's villa on the banks of the Seine, he threw himself wholeheartedly into planning a European tour. A few days later, Ethan, sporting a denim cap and a blue and white hoodie, appeared on the streets of Rome. He stood before the ruins of the Roman Forum, gazing up at the remains of the Temple of Venus, lost in awe. Afterward, he made his way to the Trevi Fountain in the heart of Rome. He sat on the edge of the wishing well, holding a coconut ice cream cone he'd bought from a street vendor. He watched the tourists and locals pass by, quietly savoring his own Roman holiday. A woman in a white dress approached Ethan. Standing before him, she removed the sunglasses perched on her nose. Ethan looked up. The woman before him had striking, deep-set, beautiful eyes, her azure irises like flowing seawater. Thinking he was blocking her view, he was about to get up, but she gently took his wrist. "Mr. Miller, don't you recognize me?" The woman's smile was refreshing, making his heart beat faster under the warm Roman sun. Beauty really was a dangerous distraction. Ethan chided himself for his instant attraction. He offered a bright smile. "You are." The woman shrugged, smiling back. "Mr. Miller, I was your attending physician at the private clinic in Paris." Seeing his blank stare, she raised a hand to cover the lower half of her face. "Recognize me now?" The woman's appearance gradually merged with the memory of the doctor in the wide white mask at the clinic. He suddenly understood. "I'm so sorry, Dr. Moreau. Without your mask, I didn't recognize you." "Dr. Elaine Moreau smiled back. "If Mr. Miller truly wishes to apologize, perhaps you could do me the honor of touring Rome with me?" Since Ethan had been the one to make the faux pas, he nodded and began to stroll through the Roman streets with Elaine. "Dr. Moreau, are you also vacationing in Rome?" Elaine nodded. After you were discharged, Mr. Miller, the hospital granted me some leave. I thought I'd travel around Europe a bit, and coincidentally, I ran into you. Elaine's radiant smile was particularly dazzling under the Roman sun. Ethan felt a little flustered by her smile. He quickly said, "Please, Dr. Moreau, call me Ethan." Elaine replied, "Then you should call me Elaine." The Roman sky was a flawless, washed blue. The two of them walked to the Trinita de Monte. Sitting side by side on the Spanish steps, enjoying the gentle breeze, Elaine suddenly asked, "Ethan, can you tell me why you came to Europe?" Seeing Ethan's silence, Elaine quickly waved her hand. "Sorry, Ethan, I didn't mean to pry into your private life. I just wanted to know why, after suffering such severe injuries, you still insisted on coming from your home country to Paris for continued treatment." Elaine paused. "I was once sent by the hospital to participate in an academic conference in your country. The medical standards there are no less advanced than in France, and your injuries weren't untreatable." Ethan cut her off. "Because I went through some terrible things back home. I was even hovering on the brink of death, my family nearly destroyed." Elaine looked apologetic. "I'm sorry, I didn't know." Ethan looked into Elaine's clear blue eyes. "It's okay, Elaine. A lot of things are in the past. You just need to let them go and embrace a new life." Elaine's eyes reflected Ethan's relieved, gentle smile. The breeze rustled his stray hairs, softly brushing against her nose. A ripple went through Elaine's heart. She quickly lowered her head to hide her unease. "Ethan," Elaine extended her hand towards him. "I'd like to amend my earlier invitation. I don't just want to ask you to tour Rome with me. If possible, may I invite you to spend the entire holiday with me?" A slight tremor went through Ethan's heart. He placed his hand over Elaine's. "I would be honored to accept Miss Moreau's invitation." A smile spread across Elaine's face. "I know a wonderful cafe nearby." They walked side by side into a coffee house, the gentle strains of a piano filling the air. Ethan paused to admire the various paintings hanging on the walls, his heart filled with silent appreciation. Elaine thoughtfully explained, "This is Rome's oldest coffee house. Famous Italian sculptors, writers, even musicians were all regular patrons here." They both sat down. A waiter in a tuxedo took their orders in English. Ethan ordered black tea. Elaine ordered a latte and a croissant. Ethan quietly admired the cafe's decor. Elaine pushed the croissant, fragrant with the scent of baked goods, towards him. "Try it," she said, smiling gently at him. Ethan bit into the crispy, soft croissant. A rich, creamy aroma invaded his taste buds. As he chewed slowly, a light citrus fragrance lingered in his mouth. "It's delicious." Ethan put down the croissant, his head bowed. Large tears began to fall, splashing onto the table. Elaine was momentarily flustered. She got up, went to Ethan's side, and gently pulled him into an embrace. "Ethan, what's wrong?" Elaine soothed him softly, gently patting his back. I used to have a little dog named Buddy." Ethan tried desperately to suppress his sobs, but the tears continued to fall in heavy drops. "He was badly beaten. Try to protect me. He accidentally fell from the second floor." Elaine gently rested Ethan's head on her shoulder, letting his tears dampen her clothes. "Back home, whenever I bought croissants, Buddy would rest his head on my lap, his big eyes watching me eat." Ethan suddenly laughed. "You know, sometimes his drool would soak a big patch on my pants." Elaine gently stroked his back, comforting him. "I understand the pain of losing a pet, and I have no reason to ask you to forget all that." But Elaine's gentle voice seemed to hold a magical quality. "If you miss him, you can come to my place. I have a dog too. Maybe he can comfort you." Ethan hastily wiped away his tears. "Really? Thank you, Elaine." Elaine knelt gently before him, her azure eyes like a calm ocean. "It's true. He's a Bernese mountain dog named Bo." Hearing the name Bo, Ethan couldn't help but smile. Who would have thought that Dr. Moreau, who seemed so aloof and goddess-like, called out Bobo at home every day? Elaine's fingertips wiped away the tears from the corners of his eyes, her own eyes shimmering. "You know, at the Trevi Fountain, why, I suddenly called out to you." Ethan shook his head repeatedly. Elaine looked at him with a gentle smile. "You were wearing a hoodie and casual sandals. Your gaze didn't linger on me at all. You were just watching the people passing by." The smile in Elaine's eyes deepened. "I thought, this person looks like a star from a black and white film. So handsome, so captivating." Ethan's heart began to pound his chest. The sound so loud it drowned out everything around them, leaving only him and the gentle Elaine before him. "So, I walked towards you, and I recognized you. It was my selfish desire to invite you to tour Rome with me, but then I got greedier. I hoped you could accompany me for my entire European holiday." Elaine's exquisite features drew closer and closer. Ethan's mind went blank. A slight coolness on his cheek. Elaine's lips had lightly touched his right cheek, a fleeting contact. "Sorry," Elaine said with an apologetic smile. "But thankfully, you're not crying anymore." In Metro City's largest amusement park, Sophia Hayes held Liam Johnson's hand, looking at him with a mixture of exasperation and affection. "Sophia, look." Liam's face lit up with a brilliant smile as he pointed to a person in a pink fox mascot costume, posing for photos with visitors. Sophia watched him with a fond smile, letting him pull her over for a picture with the mascot. "Sophia, look at this." Liam held up the instant Polaroid picture in front of her, excitedly showing it off. Sophia froze. Another man's image slowly superimposed itself over Liam's in her mind. Back when she just signed the contract, Sophia had been forced to accompany Ethan on a date to this very amusement park. Ethan, full of enthusiasm, had dragged her to take photos with all the park mascots. He'd shown her a Polaroid, his face beaming with joy, only for her to coldly knock it from his hand to the ground. "Ethan, I didn't realize you were so childish." That's all Sophia had said back then, cold and dismissive, before walking away. But later, she'd seen that same photo in a frame, Ethan holding her hand, smiling radiantly. Only then did she realize that after she'd left, Ethan had knelt on the ground, carefully picked up the dust-covered Polaroid, and treasured it ever since. A pang shot through Sophia's heart. Liam, beside her, noticed her expression change, and hurriedly hugged her. "Sophia, what's wrong?" Sophia snapped back from her memories, quickly reassuring the worried man before her. "Liam, I'm fine. It's just a little too hot." Seeing Sophia was all right, Liam grinned mischievously, pointing to a distant haunted house attraction called Phantom Manor. "Sophia, dare try it?" Sophia nodded, feigning a pout. "You always up to no good." She walked into Phantom Manor with Liam, the two of them disappearing into the darkness. As they ventured deeper, terrifying animatronics and props jumped out at them. Sophia screamed, burying herself in Liam's arms, trembling all over. "Sophia." Liam clutched Sophia's sleeve tightly, pulling her close as they moved forward. He didn't notice Sophia's fingers clenching, her palm cold and clammy. Sophia was forcefully suppressing her inner terror. Ever since her parents had jumped to their deaths while she slept, Sophia had developed a profound fear of night and darkness. Ethan knew about her hidden trauma. Whenever night fell, he would always leave a warm, soft light on for her. Ethan, who wasn't afraid of ghosts, had never taken her to a haunted house or anything similar out of consideration for her. If it were Ethan, he definitely wouldn't have brought her to a haunted house. The thought suddenly surfaced in Sophia's mind. Startled, she quickly pushed it away. "Liam," Sophia squeezed his hand tightly. "Let's leave." Liam, thoroughly spooked himself, nodded repeatedly. They waved at a security camera, signaling for the staff to escort them out. "Sophia, are you okay?" Standing in the daylight, Liam looked with concern at Sophia's deathly pale face. Sophia shook her head, replying weakly, "Liam, I'm fine. Don't worry about me." Liam led Sophia to a seat in an outdoor cafe, letting her rest for a moment. "Sophia, wait for me." Liam ran to a nearby ice cream truck. A short while later, he handed Sophia a chocolate ice cream cone. "Sophia, are you feeling a bit of heat stroke?" Liam held the ice cream to her lips, looking at her with concern. Sophia had no choice but to take it and slowly eat. In truth, ever since her family went bankrupt and her parents died, she had worked day and night to pay off debts. She worked as a waitress during the day and a bouncer at a bar at night. Under extreme poverty and exhaustion, she often came home and collapsed in a bed, sometimes going an entire day without eating. Over time, Sophia developed a severe stomach condition. Only Ethan knew about this, and because of that, he had never let her touch any cold or raw food. Their home always had a pot of stomach-soothing hot soup simmering. If it were Ethan, he would have snatched the ice cream from her hand right now, angrily warning her. A sense of desolation welled up in Sophia's heart. "Sophia?" Liam's hand touched her forehead. "Are you not feeling well?" "Sophia, what's wrong?" Sophia handed the ice cream to Liam. "Sorry, Liam, I really can't eat this." Liam frowned. "Sophia, what's wrong with you? Are you hiding something from me?" Looking at her lover's worried expression, she shook her head. How could Sophia explain? How could she possibly make him understand? That dark period she most wanted to escape had seared indelible marks on her body and soul. And along with it, Ethan Miller, the man she was desperately trying to flee, kept appearing in her mind, impossible to completely forget. Sophia looked at Liam with an apologetic expression. "Liam, I'm sorry I ruined your fun. Liam quickly shook his head, placing his fingers gently over Sophia's lips. I'm fine, Sophia. We can always go again another time. Sophia's expression softened instantly. She stood on her tiptoes and hugged Liam. Liam, you're so good to me. Liam smiled. If I'm not good to you, who else will be? The image of another man flickered in Sophia's mind. She quickly pushed it away. She hugged Liam tightly. Yes, besides Liam, who else is so good to me? Sophia tried to soothe her turbulent heart with these words. Liam turned off the lights, and they fell asleep in each other's arms. But Sophia slept very restlessly. She kept dreaming over and over of the Hayes Corporation's bankruptcy, of her parents leaping to their deaths while she slept. She sold the family mansion, sold everything of value, and rented a squalid room in a shared apartment with a dozen other people, her life a grim triangle between the restaurant, the bar, and that depressing room. She developed a severe stomach ailment and often woke up startled in the night. Her roommates, awakened by her, would curse at her in the foul-smelling room, and she could only apologize profusely. The mountain of debt on her shoulders was suffocating. Sophia thought such hellish days would never end. Until that day in the bar, when she tried to pull apart two drunk rich kids who were causing a scene. One of them, drunk and belligerent, threw his drink all over her. Who do you think you are, touching me with your filthy hands? Sophia's hands, clenched at her sides, tightened into fists, but her expression remained subservient. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Please don't cause a disturbance in the bar. The rich kid, displeased, raised his hand to strike her, but a tall figure intercepted him. You try touching her. The young man, though youthful, exuded an astonishing aura. The rich kid froze. The young man waved, and several bodyguards appeared, dragging the troublemaker out. He then turned, draped a jacket over her shoulders, his smile bright and warm. Sophia, I've paid off all your debts. You don't have to live like this anymore. Ethan Miller, silhouetted against the bar's colorful, flashing lights, seemed like a hero descended from the heavens. From now on, you're mine. You can never leave me. And then, the countless little moments of her life with Ethan. She saw his youthful love as a cage, desperately pushing him away. Ms. Hayes, I'm Liam Johnson. I'm here to apply for the secretary position. Like the hero and heroine of a romance novel. The moment Sophia saw Liam, she was deeply drawn to him. Sophia had once questioned her inexplicably intense feelings for Liam, but could find no reason for them. So, she attributed it to love at first sight. She fell desperately in love with Liam, willing to go through fire and water for him, not to mention donating one of her kidneys for him. Everything seemed preordained, as if they were constantly being drawn to each other. The hero, who had once saved her in the darkness, gradually became the object of her resentment. She hated the contract he had made her sign, hated his suffocating love, and hated even more that he stood between her and Liam, preventing them from loving each other freely. In her dream, she seemed to be floating in the air, everything laid out beneath her. She saw Ethan in the hospital corridor, clutching his stomach in pain, begging the indifferent bodyguards for medicine, only to be refused and collapse, pale-faced, onto the cold-tiled floor. She saw Ethan, after hearing Liam's words, stumble backward and be hit by falling vases, covered in blood. She saw Buddy, who had been resting quietly in a corner, rush over anxiously, causing Liam to retreat and accidentally twist his ankle. She saw Ethan, cradling Buddy's cold, lifeless body, being thrown into the walk-in freezer by bodyguards, frost crystallizing in his hair, yet still clutching the small dog's corpse tightly. She saw Ethan patiently trying to reason with Liam before closing the door, only for Liam to kneel outside all night. She saw herself, unaware of the truth, berating Ethan, and then, after the car crash, cruelly abandoning him as he lay dying, nearly losing his life. Then came the image of a gaunt Ethan, standing on the boarding ramp, turning away without a shred of reluctance. Before he left, his lips moved as if he were saying to someone in the distance, "Goodbye, Sophia Hayes." Sophia awoke in a cold sweat, her face deathly pale, her nightgown soaked through. Liam, beside her, was startled awake and fumbled to turn on the bedside lamp. Sophia, are you not feeling well?" Liam looked at Sophia, her face drained of all color, his own expression filled with alarm. He quickly woke the housekeeper and dialed 911. Sophia was carried into the ambulance by paramedics. The wail of the siren seemed to pierce her eardrums. Liam was crying uncontrollably as the paramedics performed a basic check on Sophia. "So noisy." Sophia frowned, forcing her eyes open, only to see Liam's tear-streaked face. For some reason, at this moment, seeing her lover's anxious expression, Sophia only felt a surge of impatience. "Wrong, wrong," Sophia murmured. Sophia, what's wrong? Tell me, quick," Liam asked repeatedly, tears streaming down his chin, dripping onto Sophia's face. A cold, mechanical voice echoed in Sophia's mind. "Warning, warning. Female lead is about to deviate from the plot trajectory. Requesting reinforcement of control. Requesting reinforcement of control." The glaring red light of the emergency room flashed before Sophia's eyes. She felt a wave of dizziness. What female lead? What plot? Control whom? Sophia was wheeled into the emergency room, the cold white doors separating her from Liam outside. She had clearly seen Liam's devastated face. "Ethan," before Sophia completely lost consciousness. Her faint whisper went unheard by anyone. Several hours later, Sophia opened her eyes to the glaring white ceiling of a hospital room. Sophia. Liam, who had been keeping vigil by her bedside, saw her eyes open and emotionally threw himself into her arms. "Liam." Sophia managed to weakly embrace the crying man, gently comforting him. "Sophia, you're finally awake." Liam lifted his tear-stained face, looking at Sophia with deep concern. "Don't cry, Liam." Sophia's cold fingertips wiped away his tears. For some reason, looking at Liam, Sophia only felt an emptiness in her heart. It was as if she had forgotten someone important, but no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't remember who. A dull ache throbbed in Sophia's temples. Right now, she just wanted to be alone. "Liam, don't worry about me anymore. Go home and rest." Liam was visibly stunned for a moment. "Sophia, you don't want me to stay with you?" But Sophia was always the one who clung to him, who loved being by his side the most. "Liam, I'm fine. I just need to rest in the hospital for a while. You, on the other hand, stayed with me for so long last night. If you wear yourself out for me, I'll be heartbroken." Sophia coaxed and cajoled, finally persuading Liam to go home. Once Liam's figure disappeared beyond the door, Sophia threw herself onto the soft mattress of the VIP private room bed. She closed her eyes, trying hard to recall the important person she seemed to have forgotten. Gradually, she drifted into a dream. Big Sis Sophia. An oval-faced little boy appeared before her, grinning with a gap where his front tooth was missing. So familiar. Sophia tried desperately to grab the little boy's wrist, but her hand passed right through him. Sophia. A handsome young man in a collared shirt draped his jacket over her shoulders. "I've paid off all your debts. You don't have to live like this anymore." Sophia wanted to grab the young man, to ask him to explain, but he vanished into thin air. "Goodbye, Sophia Hayes." The man before her was slender, his short hair dancing in the wind. Sophia desperately wanted to embrace the man, but he turned away without any hesitation, their paths diverging. "Ethan." Sophia's eyes flew open. She cried out his name. Crash! The white bowl filled with crab bisque in Liam's hands smashed onto the floor, shards and scalding soup scattering everywhere. Ethan? Ethan Miller." Liam stared at Sophia in disbelief, taking several steps back. "Liam, be careful." Ignoring the shattered porcelain and hot soup on the floor, Liam covered his face and fled the room. "Liam." Sophia hastily pulled out the 4-needle from the back of her hand and, barefoot, rushed out after him. "Liam." Sophia wrapped her arms around Liam's waist. "No, Liam, listen to me. Let me explain." Liam's eyes were bloodshot, his voice choked with sobs. "Then why? Tell me why." "No, it's not like that, it's not." Sophia frantically wiped away the tears streaming down Liam's face. "It's not." Sophia looked up, a hint of desperation in her eyes. She couldn't stop thinking of another man, Ethan Miller. The cold, electronic voice once again reverberated in Sophia's mind. "Warning, warning. Control ineffective. Control ineffective. Female lead deviating from plot trajectory. Female lead deviating from plot trajectory." Over the next few days, Ethan and Elaine explored Rome, the Colosseum, the Basilica di Santa Maria Maggiore, and Castel Sant'Angelo. They danced with the crowd in a Roman piazza under the evening sky. The bright moonlight illuminated their faces, adding a touch of romantic ambiguity to the cool Roman night. Elaine's hand rested on Ethan's, their breaths gradually mingling, noses almost touching. "Did you know?" Elaine looked at Ethan, her azure eyes seeming even more mysterious in the darkness. "What?" Ethan felt his cheeks flush. He tried to avoid Elaine's direct gaze. Here, Castel Sant'Angelo, a princess on the run and a down-on-his-luck reporter, after exile and escape, finally discovered their feelings for each other here, sharing an eternal kiss. Elaine's warm breath drew closer, caressing Ethan's face. Elaine gently tilted Ethan's chin, compelling him to meet her gaze. And you? Ethan couldn't help but meet Elaine's tender, expressive eyes. For a moment, he wanted to let himself sink into the depths of that ocean, to explore the emotions hidden beneath its surface. Just as Elaine's warm lips were about to touch his, Ethan suddenly pushed her away. To Elaine's astonishment, tears unexpectedly streamed down Ethan's face. He covered his face and ran, like a coward fleeing a battle. Ethan hid on a bench under the shadow of a tree by the roadside, burying his head in his knees, crying uncontrollably. He didn't know why he couldn't face Elaine's feelings for him. Perhaps he hadn't fully emerged from the shadow Sophia had cast over his life. Elaine sat down quietly beside him, without a word. Silence flowed between them, only the chirping of cicadas marking the passage of time. "I'm sorry." After a long while, Ethan finally mumbled. Elaine looked at the tear tracks on his face. "The one who should be sorry is me. I was too impulsive and scared you." Ethan shook his head vehemently. He looked at Elaine. There wasn't a trace of anger in Elaine's eyes, only deep compassion. "No." Ethan struggled to keep his voice from breaking. "I was the one who said I wanted to move on, but I'm still the one trapped in the past." Elaine looked at the boy before her, so timid, yet so brave in his willingness to accept her. She couldn't help but ask, "Can I hug you?" When Ethan nodded, she turned and embraced him. Unlike Sophia's citrusy perfume, Elaine's embrace held a faint scent of fresh grass. "What perfume are you wearing?" Ethan sniffled, his voice muffled against Elaine's shoulder. Elaine chuckled. "I'm a doctor. I don't usually wear perfume. Is there a strange smell?" "No, it smells really good." Ethan nestled into Elaine's hug. He was surprised to find that the years of accumulated grievances and frustrations in his heart seemed to flow out of him with his tears. "If you ever need a shoulder to cry on, I hope it's mine." Elaine spoke softly. "It's okay if you can't walk out of it yet. As long as you don't want to be trapped by the past anymore, I'll slowly walk with you, wait for you to accept me." Ethan lifted his head from Elaine's embrace, looking at her smooth jawline. "Elaine, will you really stay with me? Will you one day leave me, stop loving me?" Elaine looked up at him, the tip of her elegant nose brushing his forehead. She said slowly, "No, never." Ethan stared blankly at Elaine. The ocean in her eyes was deep and unwavering. How long had it been since he'd heard someone sincerely promise to love him for a lifetime? Ethan's fingertip touched Elaine's brow. "Elaine, why are you so beautiful? Why are your eyes blue? Like the sea." But Ethan didn't say the last part. Elaine smiled. "My mother is Chinese, and my father is French. My eyes and nose are like my father's. The rest of me is like my mother. Then your parents must be very handsome and charming." Ethan replied with a smile. "If you meet them, they'll be very happy." Elaine's deep, sea-like eyes were filled with Ethan's reflection. Ethan's cheeks flushed again. He quickly pulled away from Elaine's embrace. "You're French, you wouldn't understand. In my culture, only couples who are committed for life meet each other's parents." Elaine looked at Ethan's slightly flustered state and smiled gently. "I wasn't born and raised entirely in France. I grew up in China until I was 15, then my family moved to France." She turned Ethan by the shoulders, looking steadily into his eyes. "So, I know what meeting the parents means." Ethan stared dumbly at the woman before him, his face flushed crimson. "Elaine, that's playing dirty." Liam Johnson pushed Sophia Hayes out of the hospital, an unusual silence hanging between them. Ever since Sophia had accidentally called out Ethan's name, their relationship had fallen into an awkward state. At first, Liam had cried incessantly. Even though Sophia apologized repeatedly, he hadn't forgiven her. Afterward, the atmosphere between them often plunged into an icy silence, a wordless standoff. Liam pushed Sophia back to the mansion. The moment they entered, Sophia couldn't help but feel a pang in her heart. The little dog, named Buddy, was no longer here, nor was the ever-smiling Ethan. What pained her more was that she had ordered Buddy's death, and she had driven Ethan away. "Sophia," Liam suddenly spoke, his tone surprisingly cold. "Sophia, what are you thinking about?" Sophia shook her head, turned to Liam, and smiled. "Nothing, just haven't been back in a while, feeling a bit nostalgic." "Is that so?" Liam's expression softened slightly. He helped Sophia slowly up the stairs and settled her onto the bed in the master bedroom. The master bedroom's decor was entirely new. Liam had placed some wooden crafts and office supplies he liked. Sophia's gaze shifted to the flowers on the nightstand. So, Liam, like Ethan, also kept a vase of fresh flowers on the nightstand. Sophia closed her eyes in pain. She found it increasingly difficult to control her thoughts of Ethan. The things she had done to Ethan in the past flooded her mind like a tidal wave. Guilt and longing burst forth like a broken dam. With each recollection, her heart felt like it was being sliced by a knife. Sophia took out her phone and contacted her executive assistant. Investigate which country Ethan Miller immigrated to and where he is now. The assistant on the other end of the line sounded slightly surprised. Mr. Ethan Miller. Sophia paused for a moment, then replied, yes. She hung up the phone and, supporting herself on the edge of the bed, stood up. She walked to the desk, pulled open a drawer. It used to be filled with love letters Ethan had written for her. She had once threatened to make him throw them away or burn them, but Ethan could never bring himself to do it. Sophia, don't you want to see? Not at all. Sophia had coldly cut off his plea and walked away. Now, the drawer held Liam's notebooks and some watches. Sophia smiled bitterly, closed the drawer, and then walked to the closet, gently opening the door. The closet, holding only a few suits, was now filled with clothes stila, distinctly different from Ethan's. She suddenly missed the suits Ethan had personally designed with an almost painful longing. He always chose the best fabrics, designed the most comfortable styles, and would neatly hang them in the closet by color. But she had never worn them, and had even torn up the design sketches. Sophia recalled Ethan's pale, bitter smile at that time, and her heart felt as if it had been struck by a heavy hammer. She sank to her knees in agony. The past flashed through her mind, scene by scene. Back then, it was as if she had been controlled by something, madly in love with Liam, cruelly abusing Ethan. Ethan's wholehearted love had been mercilessly trampled by her. Ethan, I'm sorry. Ethan, I'm truly sorry. Her phone suddenly rang. Sophia answered the call. Ms. Hayes, we've tracked down Mr. Miller's whereabouts. The Miller family has immigrated to Europe, including their businesses and domestic assets. Sophia's heart clenched. The assistant continued. Mr. Miller is currently vacationing in Rome. The photos taken by the detective have been sent to your phone. Sophia hung up and opened the photos. In the pictures, Ethan was smiling brightly, a woman who appeared to be of mixed heritage, Elaine Moreau, holding his hand. A huge wave of displeasure and pain washed over her. She quickly scrolled through the photos. Elaine and Ethan dancing gracefully in the night, pressed close together, very intimate. Elaine kissing Ethan's cheek, holding him tightly. Clang! Sophia's phone crashed to the floor. She let out a pained whimper. Suddenly, a pair of slippered feet appeared before her. Sophia? Liam picked up the phone, looked at the screen. All pictures of Ethan. Sophia. Liam looked incredulously at Sophia, who was kneeling on the floor, whimpering. Have you fallen in love with Ethan Miller? Say something. Liam knelt on the floor, shaking Sophia, tears streaming down his face. Sophia's lips trembled. After a long pause, she slowly replied, Yes, I've fallen in love with Ethan Miller. Ethan Miller and Elaine Moreau set off for Cyprus. It was said to have the purest beaches, with clear water and fine sand, where the blue of the sky and sea merged into one, an almost unreal beauty. Ethan and Elaine walked hand in hand on Cyprus's sacred site, Aphrodite's Rock. The azure of Elaine's eyes mirrored the seawater, becoming the most beautiful scenery in Ethan's eyes. They say this is the birthplace of Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty. If lovers come here to pray, the goddess will grant them eternal love. Ethan looked into the distance. The rock formation, resembling a goddess, still stood proudly against the erosion of the waves. He couldn't help but believe Elaine's words. But is there really such a thing as eternal love? Elaine watched him quietly. Perhaps it is precisely because eternal love is so rare that people come to pray to the goddess for it. Ethan, I can't promise you eternal, undying love, but I hope that every moment of my feelings for you, right now, is sincere. The ocean in Elaine's eyes seemed to hold surging waves. Each moment of love, added together, perhaps that's what makes up eternity. Ethan gazed into those eyes, filled with hidden affection. He felt a desire to let himself sink, to drown in the tenderness of this moment. Their breaths mingled, the warm air between their lips almost palpable. Elaine's eyelashes trembled. Ethan, will you push me away again? Just as their lips were about to touch. Ethan Miller, what do you think you're doing? Hearing that familiar yet alien reprimand, Ethan flinched, nearly stumbling into the sea. Fortunately, Elaine caught him in time, wrapping her arms around his trembling body. Let go of him. Sophia Hayes gripped Ethan's wrist fiercely, trying to pull him towards her. Her dark eyes blazed with anger. Sophia couldn't articulate the emotion she felt seeing Ethan's lips almost touching another woman's. You're the one who needs to let go. Do you have any idea how much damage you've done to him? Elaine's face was contorted with rage, her elegant brows knitted together, her eyes promising a storm. Hearing Elaine's words, Sophia's grip loosened. Elaine quickly pulled Ethan behind her. Seeing this, Sophia felt a surge of fury. My business with him is none of your damn business. Outsider. And what are you? A temporary girlfriend? Or perhaps you're not even a girlfriend at all? Sophia's question startled Elaine. Though a storm of emotions churned within her, she stood firm, protecting Ethan. Sophia sneered. Do you even know about my relationship with him? He loved me for 15 years. You? Have you even known each other for 2 months? Elaine lowered her head, her body trembling slightly. Sophia, mistaking this for retreat, stepped closer. If you know what's good for you, get out of the way. Elaine finally snapped. She lunged forward, landing a punch on Sophia's jaw, catching her off guard and sending her sprawling into the shallow water. Let me remind you, Elaine's eyes seemed to burn with fire. I was the European boxing champion for 3 consecutive years. Even though that was before I was an adult, it's probably more than enough to deal with you. Elaine's fist cut through the sea breeze, hammering towards Sophia's face. Sophia tried to block, but due to her weakened state and the vast disparity in strength, she couldn't defend herself. Blood streamed down Sophia's face. Elaine flicked the blood drops from her knuckles, looking coldly at Sophia. Ethan loved you for 15 years. And what did you give him? Grief? Fear? Trauma? Or what? Elaine took Ethan's hand, warning Sophia, who lay in the water, stay away from him. Their figures gradually receded into the distance. Sophia lay helplessly in the seawater. The salty water washed the blood from her face, an acrid tide pouring into her nose and mouth. Sophia coughed, sitting up, and stared blankly into the distance. Why? She murmured helplessly. Her body felt increasingly weak, but the image of Ethan in her mind grew clearer. Some overwhelming emotion had broken through its restraints, compelling her to abandon Liam and come here. When she saw the man she'd longed for day and night with his lips almost touching Elaine's, she had lost all control. Could it be? Sophia's hand touched her chest, where her heart beat powerfully. Could it be that she had always loved Ethan? Sophia remembered those 2 strange electronic voices. Could it be that she and Liam were the female and male leads, and her the female lead, falling in love with Ethan, meant she had deviated from the original plot? Sophia lowered her eyes and suddenly burst out laughing. So, everything, the Hayes Corporation's bankruptcy, her parents' deaths, her inexplicable hatred for Ethan, her love at first sight for Liam, was all just part of a story written by someone else? The electronic voice echoed in her mind again. Female lead, you have become aware of the truth of your world. Please fulfill your obligations as the female lead and return to Liam Johnson's side. Otherwise, what? Sophia narrowed her eyes, a cold smile playing on her lips. Otherwise, you will be erased as uncorrectable data. Your weakening body is also a result of system regulation. Sophia burst out laughing. You've controlled me for so long. Isn't that enough? Now you want to erase me? The system paused for a moment. Sophia Hayes, do you know why Ethan Miller, who had consistently refused to sign, suddenly did? Sophia froze for a moment, then roared, why? The first person to realize the truth of this world was not you, but Ethan Miller. However, he didn't fully grasp the truth as you have. He was simply too attached to you, unwilling to let go, which caused a deviation in the plot. The system continued to explain. He didn't leave at the designated plot point, leading to Liam Johnson mistakenly following Ethan Miller's plot trajectory. Heartbroken departure, fleeing to a foreign land. To avenge Liam Johnson, you forced Ethan Miller's parents to commit suicide, and Ethan Miller himself was tormented to death by you. Sophia's eyes turned bloodshot. Hearing the description of how she had tormented Ethan to death, her heart ached violently. So, I informed him of the correct plot trajectory, intending to rectify the story. Unexpectedly, the female lead, you, deviated, and multiple corrections have been ineffective. The system's tone was laced with helplessness. If you return to Liam Johnson's side, there might still be a chance to correct it. No, impossible. Vicious words escaped Sophia's lips. I will not be bound by you any longer. I will have my own life. Sophia Hayes, it's impossible, the system replied coldly. When you were created as the female lead, you were not allowed to have independent thoughts. If you continue to act recklessly, this world will continue to collapse, and eventually, you too will disappear. Ethan. Sophia fell silent for a moment, then suddenly asked. Ethan Miller will become the new male lead and live the life he chooses. Hearing this, Sophia let out a breath. If that's the case, then I certainly won't go back to Liam. I will continue to follow my true feelings and love Ethan Miller. The system, seeing that persuading Sophia was futile, said no more. Since you have made an unshakable choice, I will not appear again. With that final sentence, the system vanished. Ethan. Sophia clenched her fists at her sides. If that's so, I will confess my true feelings to you. Sitting in a small tavern by the sea, Ethan and Elaine looked at each other, speechless. The waiter brought out Cypriot delicacies one by one. I'm sorry for dragging you into this. Elaine looked at him gently. Ethan, this isn't your fault. Besides, I am indeed pursuing you right now. Elaine poured the deep red wine into his glass. Go on, try the local wine. Ethan raised his wine glass and gently clinked it against Elaine's. Congratulations, Ethan, on taking the first step toward a new life. Sipping the fragrant red wine, Elaine's smile was particularly alluring. Without you, I really don't know what I would have done. Ethan looked at Elaine gratefully. I had no idea you even knew boxing. There's a lot you don't know about me. Elaine smiled. If Ethan is willing to get to know me, I would be truly happy. Ethan's cheeks turned red. He quickly looked away. The decor here is really very Mediterranean. His voice trembled on the last word. Elaine stood up, leaned forward, and gently kissed his lips. Sorry, I wanted to complete that kiss by Aphrodite's rock. Elaine smiled and sat back down, her eyes still lingering on Ethan's lips. Ethan's cheeks burned, his heart pounding wildly in his chest. Elaine before him smiled with extraordinary tenderness, looking at Ethan earnestly. Mr. Miller, would you do me the honor of being my boyfriend? Ethan smiled and nodded. In this moment, he listened only to his true heart. No. Sophia, drenched to the bone, grabbed Ethan's wrist, startling him so much that the wine glass in his hand crashed to the floor. Elaine shot to her feet, glaring angrily at Sophia. Let go of him. Sophia, however, still turned to Ethan. Ethan, I know everything now. Liam and I were just a plot device. The person I truly love has always been you. Elaine's angry expression shifted to surprise, then to pity for Sophia. Are you insane? Elaine grabbed Sophia by the front of her shirt. Sophia just kept looking at Ethan. Ethan, the system told me everything. I'm sorry. I'll make it up to you. My feelings for Liam were all required by the plot. But actually, I love you too. A flicker of disdain crossed Ethan's eyes. Sophia, what makes you think I would still love you? Sophia stared at him intently. You left me because of the plot's constraints. Just now, the system told me it wouldn't appear anymore. There's nothing standing between us. Ethan shook his head. I left you simply because I'd given up all hope. He walked to Elaine's side and took her hand. I loved you for 15 years, and you pushed me away for 15 years. Now that I have a new life, a new love, you come running back, asking me to continue loving you. Seeing the color drain from Sophia's face, a G-Fung-Dud, mocking/sarcastic, look flashed across Ethan's face. Sophia Hayes, I don't love you anymore. Please leave my life and don't come back. Elaine, seeing the situation, released Sophia. Perhaps, to the you and Ethan of the past, I was just an outsider. But now, he has chosen me, walked into my life, and I can no longer stand idly by. Elaine's eyes seemed to be coated with a layer of ice. This is the last time. I'm asking you to leave. If you disturb our lives again, it won't end this simply. Elaine clasped Ethan's hand again, and they walked away side by side. Sophia stood rooted to the spot, motionless. Her fingertips still held the faint warmth of Ethan's touch, but she could no longer reach his side. So this was how he had felt. When she had helped Liam leave, abandoning him alone in a pool of his own blood, his heart had been in this much pain. Sophia slowly sank to her knees. Shards of glass pierced her skin, drawing blood. As if feeling no pain, Sophia just muttered to herself. Even if everything I did wasn't for my own heart, the pain I caused you, that was real. The tourists and waiters in the small tavern stared at her in alarm. But no matter how the waiters questioned her, Sophia just stared blankly at the ground, lost in thought, not uttering a word. Ethan, our next stop is Spain, Elaine said, pausing. But I'm afraid you might not be in the mood for more traveling. I'm sorry, Elaine. Ethan looked apologetic. I originally promised to spend the whole holiday with you. Elaine smiled. Then, may I invite you to my home, to spend the rest of the holiday with my family? Elaine pulled Ethan into her arms. Ethan, don't apologize. None of this is your fault. Ethan closed his eyes, burying his face in Elaine's warm embrace, gently inhaling the faint scent of fresh grass from her. It's just, Elaine paused. That person, is she, perhaps, a little mentally unstable? All that talk about plots and systems. Ethan chuckled into Elaine's shoulder. Elaine laughed too, the breeze ruffling her hair. If that lady needs it, I can recommend a neurologist I know. Elaine. Ethan's fingertips touched Elaine's cheek. Elaine looked up, meeting his gaze. If the world we live in really is just a novel plot born from someone's pen, and all the events are just controlled by something else, would you still love me? Ethan's fingertips trembled slightly. Elaine sensed Ethan's unease and covered his hand with her warm palm. She smiled, rubbing her cheek against his hand. I don't know if the world we live in is real or false. The only thing I can be sure of is my heartbeat when I first saw you. Elaine met Ethan's gaze. When I saw you by the Trevi Fountain in Rome, I chose to walk towards you. When I saw you crying in the Girocca Cafe, I chose to hug you. When I danced with you at Castel San Angelo, I chose to confess my feelings to you. A gentle smile lit up Elaine's eyes. All of this, every step I took towards you, I confirm, came from my choice from my heart. Elaine moved Ethan's hand to her heart. It was beating steadily, thud-thud, as if telling Ethan none of this was false. I don't care if the world is fake or if the plot is predetermined. The only thing I care about is my love for you right now. Elaine's face drew closer, her butterfly wing lashes lightly brushing his forehead. Their breaths mingled, the scent of fresh grass filling his entire mouth. Elaine pecked lightly at his lips, like a dragonfly skimming the water. Ethan didn't push her away. As if receiving an affirmation, Elaine suddenly cupped the back of his head, gradually deepening the kiss. Saliva, tinged with the scent of fresh grass, mixed between their lips and tongues. Elaine's kiss became more intense. Then, Elaine left a soft, final kiss on his lips and reluctantly released him. Ethan's face was flushed. Sorry. Elaine looked at him innocently. I don't have much experience kissing people. I didn't know this would make you uncomfortable. Ethan looked up. Elaine, this isn't your first kiss, is it? Elaine before him smiled freely. Yes, it is. This is my first time kissing someone, and you're the first boy I've ever fallen for. Looking at Elaine, Ethan's heart pounded. But thankfully, the first boy I fell for, I managed to catch. Elaine took his hand, smiling as if in triumph. So, boyfriend, may I invite you to my home to spend the rest of the holiday? Elaine winked at Ethan. After getting his consent, she laughed happily. Sophia woke up on a hospital bed. Beside her stood Liam Johnson, his expression dark. Liam Johnson, why are you here? Sophia Hayes, you don't even call me Liam anymore. Liam looked grimly at Sophia lying on the hospital bed. Sophia didn't know how to explain. She turned her head away, avoiding his gaze. Liam Johnson, you should go. I'll transfer $500 million to your bank account. Liam let out a cold laugh. You gave Ethan Miller $500 million to leave you. Now you're giving me $500 million to leave you. Liam's laughter was particularly jarring in the silent hospital room. Our Ms. Hayes truly has nothing but money, does she? Sophia frowned. Liam Johnson, I'm the one who wronged you. You can't force love. I can't ignore my own heart. Sophia Hayes, you're laughable. Unseen, a sharp knife had appeared in Liam's hand. Its blade reflected Sophia's suddenly pale face. The tip of the knife pressed against Sophia's neck with lightning speed. Sophia Hayes, I'll ask you one last time. Why did you come here? Sophia frowned. I came to apologize to Ethan. The cool blade grazed her neck lightly. Why did you abandon me to come find Ethan Miller? After a moment of silence, Sophia replied, because I suddenly realized I don't love you. The person I love has always been Ethan. The blade cut a bloody line on Sophia's neck. Sophia Hayes, why don't you just obediently come back to me? The system told me everything. If you come back to me, I'll continue to take care of you like before. We can forget all this, live together like we used to. Wouldn't that be good? You know about the system's existence? Sophia asked, surprised. Tears welled in Liam's eyes, his gaze cold. It said you were originally my female lead. We were supposed to be together forever, become the happiest couple in this novel. But you broke your promise. You betrayed our commitment. For a supporting character, you abandoned me. Hatred gathered in Liam's eyes. The tip of a knife pierced Sophia's neck. Sophia gripped Liam's wrist tightly, violently flipping him to the ground. The sharp knife clattered onto the floor, emitting a piercing hum. Liam Johnson, you're insane, Sophia shouted, her hand pressed tightly against the wound on her neck. Large drops of blood seeped through her fingers. Liam, sitting on the floor, burst out laughing. Sophia Hayes, Back then, Ethan Miller suffered a major arterial injury. I wonder if you'll be as lucky as he was, if you can be saved. Sophia frantically pressed the call bell by her bed. Sophia Hayes, do you know what I asked the system for before it left? Seeing Sophia's panicked face, Liam smiled with satisfaction. I asked for 30 minutes. I had the system isolate this room from all outside contact for 30 minutes. Looking at Liam's crazed expression, Sophia retreated in panic. Liam Johnson, I didn't know you were this kind of person. Sophia Hayes, what right do you have to judge me? You could have chosen not to love me, to love Ethan Miller. Or you could have completely followed the plot trajectory. Liam continued, but you kept me with you, drove Ethan away, and then you turn around and say you love Ethan, and abandon me. Blood oozed relentlessly from between her fingers. Sophia's consciousness grew increasingly blurry. Sophia Hayes, I want you to die in front of me. Liam's smile was ghastly white. I want you to experience Ethan's pain, my pain. A woman like you, so fickle, who betrays her lover, doesn't deserve a good ending, much less the position of female lead. Liam's face before her became increasingly indistinct. Sophia collapsed to the floor. Liam picked up the fallen knife, stepped over Sophia's body, and stabbed her repeatedly. Pain. Sophia's lips moved faintly. Memories of the past unfolded slowly before her eyes. Ethan as a child, Ethan as a teenager, standing before her, saying something to her. She tried to hear their words, to catch up to them, but she could never reach them. She seemed to trip over something, falling to the ground. The Ethan from her previous life, whom she had tormented to death, lay on the ground, his body still warm. He suddenly opened his eyes and slowly stood up. His pale skin flaked off with his movements, his whitened eyeballs staring straight at her. Ethan mercilessly stomped her underfoot, a sharp knife appearing in his hand out of nowhere. Sophia Hayes, I don't love you anymore. I hate you. The phantom of Ethan gradually merged with the figure of Liam before her. They both held sharp knives, ruthlessly stabbing the woman lying on the floor. With Liam's hate-filled shout, he personally ended Sophia Hayes' life. Liam collapsed in the pool of blood, his hand trembling as he slowly brought the knife to his own neck. He looked at the countdown on the wall, 00:15. Sophia Hayes, I will never love you again. Liam lifted his head, tears streaming down his face. He had a dream. In that dream, he was Liam Johnson, a poor but resilient intern. In that dream, he had never met Sophia Hayes. He had relied on his own talent and hard work to gain his superior's appreciation, rising through the ranks to eventually become the youngest male CEO in the company's history. Later, he met the love of his life and had a complete and happy family. Surrounded by his children and grandchildren, he died peacefully of old age, closing his eyes with gratitude. He violently slashed his own neck and slowly collapsed to the floor. As his consciousness faded, Liam murmured, Goodbye, Sophia Hayes. I, Liam Johnson, am going to live my own life now, too. Elaine and Ethan returned to Paris. They stood before a magnificent, luxurious villa. Vibrant roses bloomed in front of the villa, making the multi-story mansion even more eye-catching. The villa door slowly opened, and a woman in a traditional Chinese qipao emerged. Mrs. Moreau smiled and took Ethan's hand. We finally get to meet Ethan. Our whole family has been curious about the Ethan Elaine always talks about. Today we finally see him. Mrs. Moreau slipped a green jade bracelet onto Ethan's wrist. Now that I've met Ethan, I can't help but adore him too. Come in, come in. Mrs. Moreau quickly led Ethan inside. Oh dear, the food is still on the stove. Mrs. Moreau smiled, then suddenly slapped her forehead and bustled off. A Bernese mountain dog bounded over at the sound, excitedly circling Ethan. Then it obediently laid down in front of Ethan, placing its large paws on his shoes. Bo sniffed Ethan's fingertips repeatedly, then affectionately leaped into his arms. The weight of a full-grown dog was more than Ethan could steadily handle. He was knocked to the ground by Bo. Bo! Elaine, seeing this, rushed to pull Bo away, but Ethan, hugging Bo, had tears in his eyes. Buddy. Ethan hadn't felt the warmth of a dog in so long. He couldn't help but think of Buddy. Bo, seeing him cry, paced anxiously, thinking he had hurt him. Ethan quickly reassured him, and Bo finally calmed down, licking the tears from Ethan's face. Ethan laughed, begging for mercy. Elaine helped Ethan up, smiling helplessly. I hope Ethan can get used to my family. Ethan smiled and hugged Elaine tightly. I love your family. They're so warm and lively. Mr. Moreau had left work early to meet him. As soon as he opened the door, he greeted Ethan with a warm hug. He was a tall, handsome Frenchman, his azure eyes identical to Elaine's. Dinner's almost ready. Why isn't Cecile back yet? Mrs. Moreau placed dishes on the table, glancing at the clock on the wall. Cecile is my older sister. She's a sculptor. She has an exhibition in Paris right now, so she might be busy, Elaine explained apologetically to Ethan, her thumb gently stroking his fingertips. A young woman burst into the dining room. When her eyes landed on Ethan, they lit up. So, you're my brother-in-law. You're very handsome. Before Ethan could react, Elaine gently swatted Cecile's hand. Sis, please don't scare my boyfriend. Cecile put her hands on her hips, poking Elaine's forehead. You're the one who shouldn't interfere with me bonding with my brother-in-law. Looking at the boisterous family before him, Ethan's heart felt full. Mrs. Moreau, afraid Ethan wouldn't be used to French cuisine, had specially prepared a table full of Chinese delicacies. Mr. Moreau, eating the Chinese food his wife May had made, said excitedly, Ethan, it's a good thing you came. I haven't had May's home-cooked Chinese food in so long. I missed it terribly. Cecile was busy piling food on her plate. I haven't had Chinese food in ages. I've been craving it for so long. Beside him, Elaine smiled at Ethan. Aren't they being a bit dramatic? Ethan shook his head repeatedly. This is probably what I've always imagined a family to be like. The family happily enjoyed the dinner cooked by Mrs. Moreau. After dinner, Cecile turned on the TV in the living room. Yesterday, the bodies of a man and a woman were discovered in room 1309 of a public hospital in Paris. According to the preliminary assessment by the Paris Police Department's forensic pathologist, the murder weapon was a sharp knife found at the scene. Cecile turned off the TV, muttering, the crime rate in Paris lately is really worrying. What's wrong? Elaine asked, walking over with Ethan, looking at Cecile's troubled expression. Cecile sighed. Nothing much. They found 2 bodies of Chinese nationals in a public hospital. Seems one was the CEO of a large corporation from back home. I think the surname was Hayes. Ethan frowned. A Chinese national with the surname Hayes. Elaine looked at him with concern. Ethan, is it someone you know? Ethan shook his head. Anyway, not someone important. Elaine led Ethan to his bedroom. Just as she was about to close the door, Cecile's hand stopped her. Ethan, you should just stay here, Cecile said, smiling at him from the doorway. Mrs. Moreau also smiled at Ethan. We won't disturb your private time with Elaine. Ethan's face flushed. Elaine quickly said, Mom, sis, please stop teasing Ethan. Elaine ushered them out of her room. You're being too much. Chinese parents are usually very reserved. Mrs. Moreau covered her mouth in surprise. Oh, I'm so sorry, Elaine. It's the first time you brought a boy home. We were all just too excited. Elaine quickly shooed them away, along with Mr. Moreau and Beau, who had joined the commotion. Ethan, please don't mind them. Elaine gently closed the door and walked over to Ethan, who was sitting on a chair, hugging him tightly. Not at all. I really like your parents and your sister. Elaine buried her face in Ethan's neck, her voice muffled. And what about me? Ethan's hand stroked Elaine's soft hair. Of course I like you too. Elaine, Ethan, I'm just so happy. Elaine's eyes were filled with desire. The next moment, the man took the lead. The crashing waves yearned to grasp her ankles, to pull her into the deep sea called love. He kissed Elaine's lips, their tongues meeting, igniting an ocean storm. Ethan's scorching fingertips traced the line of Elaine's spine where her clothes had slipped, making her gasp lightly. They were like a small boat tossed on the sea, or 2 deep-sea fish tightly entwined. They were swept into the depths by the relentless tide, falling together into a damp, warm, secret place. After they had cleaned up, Elaine cradled Ethan in her arms, whispering a French love song in his ear. Les roses vermeilles fleurissent, le petit rossignol chante-moi, et mon amour nous promenons sous ce clair de lune pour ne plus jamais nous séparer. The crimson roses bloom, the little nightingale sings my love, and I stroll beneath this moonlight never to be parted again. Ethan closed his eyes peacefully. He and Elaine, never to be parted again.